We're next going to go into the Torah portion. What's the Torah portion? When the children of Israel came back from captivity and they opened up the Torah scroll, they noticed there were spaces in the Torah scroll. And there was about 52 spaces. What they decided was to use those as markers for every single week. They're going to read a part of the Torah. They didn't want that captivity to happen again. They didn't want to be taken out of the promised land because they didn't know. And so they wanted to teach. They wanted to teach the whole people the Torah every year. And so what we do is we do a portion every week so that by the time you get to the end of a year, you've heard Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Today we're in the book of Exodus. And the Torah portion is Beshalach. And for some reason I didn't put it on there, but there it would be up here in the top. Torah, Exodus, we're going to read from chapter 13, 17 to chapter 17, 16. So that'll be my focus today. Okay. So I'm going to go over it in a nutshell. I'm going to start off by giving you a quick version of the entire passage, what's being covered here. If I was going to give you the Torah portion in a nutshell, half of the time I would talk to you, I would be focused on one major event. It's the parting of the Red Sea, or the Reed Sea, or the End Sea, depending on how you translate it. It might be Egyptian, it could be Hebrew. So the people test God at the edge of the sea. They see the Egyptians, they've changed their minds, they're coming after them. There's a pillar of fire in the night that turns to a pillar of fire by the day. It's been guided them there here to the sea. Now it goes behind them and protects them while they go into the sea. As Moses sticks out his staff and the sea parts in front of them, they go through. Israel is safe. The Egyptians die in the same sea. Then comes the song of Moses, the Mika Mocha, chapter 15, the song of Moses. Who is like you? No one is like this God. Who can do this? Right? The rest of the Torah portion is important, but I can't imagine anything ever being more important than what I just spoke about. I mean, you're going to see miracle after miracle after miracle in this Torah portion. The bitter water, it becomes sweet when a stick is thrown in. Manna raining down from heaven in the morning. Quail at night. Water coming from a rock. Joshua defeats Amalek. Moses holds up a staff, and as long as he holds up a staff, they defeat Amalek. If he drops the staff down, Amalek overcomes Israel. So, obviously, he needs some help. He held his staff up the whole time, and they won. And if you notice in this Torah portion, all this stuff is happening. The most amazing stuff in the entire Bible, like you wouldn't believe. And the people complain 5 times in this Torah portion. Wouldn't it have been better for us to be in Egypt? Were there not enough graves in Egypt that we had to be brought out here to die? Goodness gracious. After seeing 10 plagues, after seeing everything they saw, 5 times wasn't enough for them. That's incredible. It's also important. So, how do we know that this day is important? How do we know that the day of the Exodus, the Passover, the Exodus, the Reed Sea splitting, how do we know that's important? Well, internally in the passage, the events leading up to it, the events afterwards, would give you a good hint. The 10 plagues that led to it, there's a superpower of the day. Egypt is crushed right in front of them, and they did nothing. The Israelites did nothing but complain about it, and they still watched God destroy the Egyptians right in front of them. I said, the pillar of fire, the pillar of smoke, the parting of the sea. My goodness, all those miracles I talked about. There's not a lot of parshas, even in the Torah, that have this many miracles, except the creation story. There's the flood, and then you get this. This is pretty incredible. So clearly the Bible, the entire Bible, makes unbelievable connections to this. Number one would be Messiah. What happened to Messiah? the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua is directly tied to this day specifically. This is Passover. He dies on Passover. Not only is it so important to connect him to the day, he's even connected to the hour, with his death being at the same time that the lambs were killed. That's pretty important. Very strong connection. There's also the connection that I just mentioned. In the book of Kings, 1 Kings 6, and I'm correct this time, because he says, the book says that Solomon began building the temple 480 years after this event. Now, it's not tied to the day, but it is tied to the year. It's unbelievable that they're still counting that, even 480 years later. What do we count time from? Our years are based upon the birth of Yeshua. Their calendar was based on the parting of the Red Sea. Both of those dates are connected, and we count them. We count time from them. The Exodus has another direct tie. And so I would point you to Exodus chapter 12, 40 and 41. There's where the 40 and 41 came from. It gives you a direct connection, and it's interesting, but I need to take you to another place, okay? So it says there that on the self-same day, Israel came out of Egypt. The self-same day. 430 years to the self-same day. And what it says in that passage is they sojourned in Egypt. Can y'all hear me? Okay. They sojourned in Egypt. And I want to bring in another scripture because I think it will expand that a little bit. It will give you another perspective on what that means. Okay? So before I bring that other one in, I read that and I said, the self-same day, Egypt. Well, that could be Joseph being sold to Potiphar, the brothers coming to get food when they were in famine, Jacob arriving, the day that they became enslaved. What was the self-same day that it's talking about? I think it's important because it's telling you on the self-same day, 430 years later, okay? And so I don't think it's any of those. I want to make a proposal, and I'm going to defend it. So this is a good one for us to midrash. I'm not going to force anybody to believe what I believe, but I want to bring in the Galatians, and I want to point something out. In Galatians chapter 3, 16 and 17, it states that the 430 years to the law was the promise to Abraham and his seed. Well, the law was given this year. The year of the Exodus is when the law was given. 430 years then, going back to the promise, would be the calling of Abraham out of Haran. In other words, the text then, if I take Galatians interpretation back to Genesis 12, why do I say that? Exodus 12. Thank you. I need somebody on this side for some reason to keep me on track. Okay. So if I use that interpretation, what it's saying is the direct connection to the self-same day is the day God calls Abraham into the promised land. So it was, again, tied to the Exodus. The promise coming into the land is fulfilled on the self-same day as the Exodus by Moses. That's interesting. I'd never heard that before. But I want to make that as something to consider. Okay? I have the Septuagint. When I read the Septuagint, Exodus 12 actually states these words. They sojourned in Egypt and Canaan for 430 years, which gives a little bit of more help to my argument I'm making here. Okay? So what's the point? So what? Who cares? Here's my point. I think the Bible is telling us that the key to unlocking the importance of this day, this Exodus, is tied to Abraham. Understanding what Abraham did and the importance of that, the promise, that is going to help you unlock the importance of this day. They are tied together. Okay? So what does it matter? That promise, Genesis 12, is repeated 7 times. Genesis 13, Genesis 15, 17 with the circumcision promise, 22 with the binding of Isaac, 26, Isaac gets the same promise, it's passed to him. 2 times Jacob gets the same promise. In Genesis 28 and 35. 8 times God repeats this promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 8, important number. Why is 8 important? It's a renewal, right? There's 7 days in a week. The 8th day is the beginning of a new week. A new beginning represents continuation. It represents perpetuity. And even in English, infinity is an 8 sideways. Right? So it's important. This promise lasts forever. God takes his time here to make sure that we understand it is forever. It is forever. So let's look with other connections. I didn't move forward in this. Where were you? Left side? Y'all have been keeping me straight this whole time. Fact checkers. Appreciate it. Okay, so here's where I'm going to finish. Okay? The forever promise of Abraham coming into the promised land, connected to the Exodus. There's more. Galatians 4. Hagar is Mount Sinai. Sarah is the new covenant. What is Mount Sinai? That follows this. It's the law, right? So Moses brings the people out of Egypt, and then he gives them the law at Mount Horeb. There's something there that connects to Hagar. So we're back to Abraham. So again, the story of Abraham is helping you to interpret the Exodus and the events that follow. Okay? So what's wrong with that? What was wrong with Hagar and the relationship with Hagar? Was that built on faith? It wasn't. No. It was flesh. It was people using their own personal logic to help them get to where they think they need to be. They think God needs help. So instead of listening to God and being patient, obeying, they take it into their own hands. They do what they think is right. Okay? So there they go, Mount Horeb. Moses goes up Mount Horeb, and what do the people do? They get impatient. They think, what has happened to this guy Moses? So they take things into their own hands, and they make a golden calf, right? And they let their flesh take over. It's not that the law given on Mount Sinai was bad. It's the people weren't ready for it. The people's law was in their own hearts. It was their own fleshly desires. That's what they followed. They rejected God all the way into up to the edge of the promised land. 40 days of spying out the land led to 40 years, and that generation passes away. Okay? Sarah, I put up here the new covenant. Deuteronomy. Is Deuteronomy the new covenant? I don't have to go that far. All I have to say, it is an allegory for the new covenant. It is given to a new generation. Okay? It's not a covenant like the one made to their fathers, though God brought them out of the land of Egypt by the hand and was a husband to them. They broke that covenant. No, this law will be written on their hearts. It will be written on their inner parts and on their hearts. And that is the allegory of the new covenant, or Deuteronomy. Okay? So, with those connections, one more connection. Moses has the law, gives them the law, but it doesn't go into their heart. But who follows Moses? Yehoshua, a derivation of the same name, Jesus. Jesus comes after Moses and brings them in. A people with a heart for God going into the promised land to take it over. Okay? So my conclusion, 3 things. 1, God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is forever. No matter what the people did, no matter how much they complained, they could not deter God from his purpose on this day. Unbelievably important day. It's a powerful message to us that God is in control. And the 2 covenants, the one at Horeb and the one in Deuteronomy, which will be the plains of Moab 40 years later to a new generation, that is Hagar and that is Sarah. It is a disobedient father and then obedient son. That is supposed to be something that you recognize as an allegory that can possibly be in your own life. It is not good for us to be here as a group of people with the law near us and hearts of flesh that desire our own way. We are to be transformed by the law, transformed to hearts for God, and that fulfills the new covenant. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.